Thank you. Today is Tuesday, November the 16th, 2021. It is 5:45, and this is the Education Committee meeting. We have one item on the agenda. It is 2021-1234, and Councilman Withers is in here.
All right,
There's yours.
Yeah, this is a resolution, and just for the viewing audience, this is going to be withdrawn and reintroduced as an ordinance. So it will come back for this committee in 2 meetings, I guess. But what this pertains to is the historic Bailey School campus. It was originally built in 1929 as a K-8 school. The Bailey School went through several repurposings from the Nashville school system. For a while it was truly a K-8 school, then for a while it was closed, and then they used it as a special education school, and then it closed, and then it reopened as Bailey Middle School. Bailey Middle School sort of struggled with population enrollment, and so MNPS at the end of Dr. Register's term sort of, they moved Bailey Middle into the Stratford building, so they call it lower campus, but they were able to accommodate both the middle school and the high school in the Stratford building. So that opened up the Bailey campus again. Then they moved East Middle off of Main Street to the Bailey building, sort of in hopes that it would grow. The enrollment actually declined, and so they moved East Middle back to its original location on Main Street next to East High. So that left the building available. Nashville Classical is a K-8 charter that had been approved several years and was outgrowing the building that it was in, and so Nashville Classical worked with MNPS to lease the building, since the size kind of works out pretty well, and a lot of the faculty and parents and live in the neighborhood anyway, so that was a good fit. So that was agreed to a couple of years ago, I guess toward the end of the last term. So they've actually been in that building for a while, but due to some procedural oversights,
they don't have a lease?
They do have a lease,
Right.
and they are paying rent on it, but we just never memorialized it with an ordinance.
Yes, okay.
And so that's what we'll do, is to bring an ordinance that catches all that up today. But
So
yeah,
today
they are
it is
paying
being
rent for the
withdrawn, but we will be hearing
building.
about it again and
in 2
having
weeks.
a opportunity to have some conversation about it again.
Yeah,
They'll bring it back as an ordinance.
yeah.
A quick question, what happens if the ordinance doesn't pass?
What would happen?
Yeah,
So, I mean, that's the thing, is leases of property do have to be approved by the council. So, yeah, I mean, if the lease doesn't pass, I think that it would maybe create some issues, but I
The
would
lease
say
was
they probably,
The lease
probably
was
would-
approved by the school board
right.
at the end of the last term. So
Yes.
the council could not do that, but it was approved by
I
the school board.
I don't know that if the council, doesn't approve it, that it's gonna end up meaning that the school is turned out of the building. I think that's probably gonna just make a more complicated, situation moving
I'm
forward.
just asking because you said that this was supposed to come to us and we never voted on it.
Yeah, well, and
Right,
it's
I
just
mean,
like.
it happens, I mean, it
Yeah.
happens, I think that there's been a real effort to make it happen less and less, but, this is, the ordinance will be coming to the council to cure the error.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily gonna be, there's already people in the building, it's already in effect, there's already, a reliance on that contract, so I don't think that people would be turned out of the building, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it is, I mean, it's revenue positive to the city, I mean, because otherwise they would have had a vacant building. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a good sized building, so it's good to have a tenant for it, which is also.
Is
that's
there
cool.
any kind of checklist that we go through? Because and what I'm thinking of is like, it's been, maybe 4 or 5 council meetings ago that, it's in a totally unrelated item, but it just kind of pointed out the need for a checklist. And it was a property that had been allowed to build a building, a daydo in the back, but they should not have been,
Right,
they should
for
not
like
have
the
been
codes
approved. But then
department.
we kind of went behind
Well-
to kind of make up for what hadn't happened before.
Yeah.
And it just kind of seemed like one of those, not not that anybody deliberately did anything wrong, it's just one of those administrative things.
Okay,
And
so
I'm
ask your question. I think you understood her question.
Right.
It doesn't have anything to do with this,
Well, it
Right,
does in
So,
that.
And so-
would you
what's the
ask
ch-
it a little differently so that if
Okay.
I can understand it, then I know the
Okay.
public can
Well,
understand it.
what my question has to do, and let me rephrase it, and I'm sorry that I went into a,
No, that's okay.
merry-go-round
I
there.
just,
but just the idea that there are frequent things in all organizations, and we are no different than any other big or small organization, in that things slip. And so one of the things I was wondering is what do we do to minimize those things that slip? Is there a holder of the checklist? Or is there some, what is the administrative function that makes sure everything gets done when it's supposed to get done?
So I can't speak to that because I'm not really involved on this type of creation. And the difficulty here is that it is MNPS, it goes through public property, and then it comes to council. So I don't know at what point there was like a hiccup on that. One thing that I will say is that it was moving through at the end of a term where there's a lot of staff turnover. And I think that part of that is just it's human error, and sometimes, you know, mistakes happen, and I don't know, I mean, potentially a checklist could help, but it's not certain that in this case, a checklist would have been the thing.
And I'm just using a checklist as
Right,
kind of a
but-
metaphor, I don't necessarily mean
But so,
a
I mean, that's
checklist,
the
but
thing
a
is that,
process.
you know, I think that the important thing too is that when a mistake does occur to try to cure that error.
okay,
Yeah,
yes.
and I
yes,
just think
thank you for
it's a point in
Okay.
time to say, oh, we need to look at
Right.
something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Right,
so I have, is it on this, because I hate to be going all around something that's not on the agenda when we were just doing this. So I have here and then there, please.
So I think I remember seeing multiple leases come
Yes.
through. So we're gonna have multiple ordinances, or is it gonna be one ordinance with
There-
all of them?
Well, so there are 1, 2, 3 separate lease agreements. So when this comes back through, it will be most likely, or at least I've recommended it to be an ordinance that approves the lease agreement in section 1, and then section 2 approves the lease amendment 1 to the lease.
Got it. So there's 7, you said? 7?
There's 3 on the agenda
Okay.
They're ordinances.
that are ordinances that are, but those are different. I mean, so
Different building.
next meeting, there are 3 lease agreements that will be up in this committee, all for different, they're not related to this particular property, but those are MNPS leases that are coming through.
Councilman Cash?
Yeah, thanks. I understand it's being withdrawn, and I kind of don't expect all these questions to be answered tonight, but I do have some questions and want to understand this. You know, I know that in metro schools, you know, like with metro government, there's an operating budget and there's a capital budget. And so I guess I'm wondering when a charter school is leasing property from metro public schools, does the money that metro gets go to the operating budget to pay for the people that are helping manage? Does it go into the capital budget to help if there are needed, you know,
Improvements.
needed, you know,
Well,
needed,
yeah, my understanding from,
Staffing or whatever?
my understanding for this one is that,
Okay.
you know, Nashville Classical is a MNPS, it is an approved charter school, but so they do have their student-based budgeting dollars, plus, like a lot of charters, they also do philanthropy, but that goes to the MNPS operating budget, is my understanding. Sometimes-
wait, you jumped from philanthropy to MNPS operating budget.
Yeah, I
What do
mean,
you mean?
in other words, the school has their student-based budgeting dollars, as well as private
The
philanthropy.
BEP that's flowing through,
Yeah.
plus any extra that Metro's paying.
Right, so, but they have their student-based budgeting dollars that are allocated through MNPS.
And that pays for staff.
Yeah,
faculty,
and then they
but it
also
doesn't
sometimes
pay
have
rent.
private philanthropy, but all that pays rent to the operating. But my understanding is that goes to
You mean if the
MNPS.
money is, when the money is collected by Metro, does it go into the capital budget or the operating budget? Is that your question?
Correct.
I believe it goes to operating.
I think it goes operating, but I might need to.
That's my
In other words, it helps pay David Prophet's salary and the people under him, but if there's upkeep to that, that's Metro's responsibility, right?
Not a lot of times.
Well, I was
A
saying
lot
it
of times
might
it is,
be-
it's a tenant improvement.
Right, governed by the lease agreement.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I'm not familiar enough with this lease agreement to say that, but I was gonna say, I mean, it'd be Metro Building at the end of the day, but a lot of times there
A lot of
are
times it's a
agreements.
tenant
I
improvement,
don't know
yeah,
if
where the
that's,
tenant pays for it.
right, in this
So-
particular
And
agreement.
I kind of want to, if I may, I kind of want to understand, like, if we're required to lease school space to charter schools, and you know, every once in a while, it's the state board that's telling us we have to accept a charter school. I understand this one got voted on a second time and it did pass, but sometimes, but when the state does that, do they? And I think I know the answer. Are they also sending money along with that? In terms of, you know, generally Metro we pay for the buildings. That's really not a state thing. There may be
The money
some
follows
monies
the
that.
child, so whatever child will go into the schools, whatever money would go into the school system for this particular student, then it goes to that school.
I understand that that's true for the operating budget, but I don't know that that's true for capital funds.
I don't think they get capital funds.
Not typically, I mean,
It's,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure they don't get capital.
And
It's a-
this is an existing, I mean, sometimes, you know, charter schools build new structures, but this building was built in 1929, so it's an existing.
For it to be capital, it has to be over a certain dollar amount that actually changes the value of the building.
I mean, that's-
So maintenance isn't that, maintenance is operating.
So I think what I'm hearing is a lot of people are thinking about what a lot of different answers are for some of the questions. I think you have heard the questions. So since this is gonna come back to us and we're gonna have a conversation about this, again,
Yeah.
I would ask maybe, since you see how some of the questions are, that could be answered when we come back.
Yeah.
I
And
would
if
ask,
some have questions that we haven't gotten to here to let the councilman know, then I'm suggesting that maybe you give that to him and let him know, so that when it does come back for us to talk
I think
about it,
too, to have
we'll have
representatives from
somebody
maybe from
here.
MTS
here, right?
to
Yeah, that's
answer
fine.
it.
I mean, we could have David
To
Prophet
answer
here.
it.
Yeah.
Right, I was
Do
gonna
we
say, and
have-
I would imagine probably they're gonna, I would imagine they're not here because this resolution's
Yeah.
It
getting
was
withdrawn.
supposed to
Yeah.
just be, so I was told, just taken off,
But it's-
so,
Yeah.
Incidentally-
Yeah.
okay,
incidentally, do we have a new Mark North?
Not that
not
I'm.
yet. They,
Alright.
That's
they're
separate
looking
from the
at
other one.
doing something a little differently though, so I think they do kinda have some stuff in place, but it's not, I don't think it's
If we don't
out
have
there
him,
yet.
let's get Hank Clay here.
So
You can
what
answer
I
that
would
question.
ask you to, one of the things that I did want to remind you all, you know, December the 1st is a call meeting. We're gonna have the director of school here to talk about some different things. I would suggest, because it sounds like you all have a lot of different questions, that if you have some different questions specifically that you know that you wanted her to answer, that you might share those with me ahead of time so that we can get those to her. I should also asked that we have the state's person, the state's lobbyist, so that we could talk about the things that they foresee coming in this next session. I'm not sure if they will have that, and since we're trying to get a new person, I don't know how that's gonna be. It has also been suggested, I will let you know, that we also reach out to school board members to see if they would like to come and have a conversation with us. So I will probably ask to have another call meeting in January, and we do that.
And what
Excuse
you-
me?
Which is the call meeting you're talking about? 'Cause I
It's
don't-
December the 1st. It's an education call
4
meeting.
o'clock.
Did we just get that notice, or?
I don't know when
It's been-
Rosie set it out.
Rosie
It's been
sent
a
out
little
something, I think.
Yeah, it was sent out, Rosie sent it out sometime back. Okay, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, it has been adjourned. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against?
Easy.
Thank you all.
It's a good thing I'm somewhat
Let me
familiar
see
with
if I
this
have
particular
that one. I may have.
Because I remember